Welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast. I'm Kathy Little.
And I'm Melinda Wilson, and we are talking all things inner healing, true connection with Jesus, and the full benefits package of the cross. Thank you for joining us. Hey there, and welcome to the Face-to-Face Ministries podcast.
Yeah, we are at episode 13.
Episode 13.
That's
wow.
Pretty crazy to think that we are already at 13, but there is so much more coming. So what are we doing today, Melinda?
Today we have the honor of introducing you to Dr. Carl Lehman, and that's Lehman. He is a psychiatrist, board-certified MD who lives in the Chicago area, who also happens to love the Lord very much, and he created a inner healing model called the Immanuel approach.
Immanuel, God with us.
Yes.
So that would be based on connection with Jesus.
Connection face-to-face with Jesus.
Yeah. And this particular model is, I would call it, our foundational approach. Even though we have been cross-trained in several different prayer models, this would be the foundation to spring from, because it's all about helping people get a good, clear connection, interactive connection with Jesus. So every prayer modality that we present on the podcast can stem up out of this or be incorporated with this. So I've been waiting to get this content out. I think it is so paramount. It's like a keystone for inner healing.
Yeah, and just one thing I was thinking of is, as you'll hear, Dr. Carl, as he likes to be called, I think it's affectionate. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah,
it was
is.
wonderful to spend that time with him, and he graciously gave us as much time as we wanted. But Dr. Carl was a very analytical person. Of course, he's an MD psychiatrist, so he's pretty darn smart. And he approached God from a more logical left brain standpoint for many years. And as you'll hear from his testimony, learning that Immanuel actually wants to have an interactive connection with us on a daily, regular basis changed his life and really softened his heart. So I can't wait for you all to hear him and hear his experience with Immanuel.
We are both very excited to introduce the Immanuel approach to you through this interview with Dr. Carl Lehman.
We are here today with Dr. Carl Lehman, and he is the founder, the principal, I'll let you kind of give your title, but of the Immanuel approach. And I've got to share this quickly, but I have found the Immanuel approach to inner healing prayer the most effective tool to really connecting with Jesus in our pain and in good times as well as bad times. And so we're so honored to have you here, Dr. Lehman. Should I call you Dr. Lehman?
Dr. Carl.
Dr. Carl.
Dr. Carl.
Okay.
Is that okay?
It's Dr. Carl with a K.
Thank you. Yes.
So we're so honored and delighted to have you. And I do have some questions for you because we'd love as many people to know about the Immanuel approach and the goodness of Jesus as possible.
Yes.
Well, first of all, what is the Immanuel approach?
Yeah, that was one of your questions. So the long answer was...
you can share that.
Yes. There is a long answer to that question, what is the Immanuel approach? And even the short answer is kind of longish. I was thinking one way could be just to describe the process. That might be one way that would actually fit in our time. So, first piece, you apply brain science about how gratitude actually brings on the part of your brain that does relationships. So you deliberately recall and reconnect with a positive memory and focus on the best parts, stir up gratitude, stir up appreciation. And doing that will turn on your relational circuits. It'll turn on the part of your brain that actually does relationships. And that makes your brain easier to connect with the Lord. And if you have positive God memories, you use those. Because the way our brain carries relationships, my relationship with my wife is carried in the memories of our past experiences. So if you think about and activate and focus on a memory for a past positive connection with the Lord, that will activate in your brain where you carry your relationship with the Lord. So positive memory and gratitude turns on your relational circuits. Gratitude and remembering a connection with the Lord will actually activate your neurological relationship with Jesus, with the Lord. And so those pieces are the perfect launching pad to connect with him now, right here in the present. So that's the first part of the Immanuel approach. So once you're then in that positive memory, your relationship circuits are on, you've activated your memory kind of context for your relationship with the Lord. You say, okay, Jesus, you promise you abide with us, you never leave us or forsake us. We know you've been with us, you are here right now. So I welcome you to be with me. In the memory context, there's reasons for that explained in the book, but so there in that memory, Lord, can you help me transition from just looking at, it's like a photo album or it's like a video, can you help me perceive your living, active, interactive presence in that memory context, in that memory place, Jesus? And then you describe whatever comes into your awareness. And if there's not something in the way, the person says, oh my goodness, I'm in that positive memory and Jesus is alive there. I'm interacting, I'm having an interactive connection with the living presence of Jesus in that memory place. So that's the first thing you do, is you establish a living interactive connection with Jesus in the context of a positive memory. So the next part of the Immanuel approach is once you've got that in place, Jesus is now in the room. He's the ranking officer. Anybody else can just follow his lead. So if Jesus is in the room and the person is connected with the Lord, he's now in the driver's seat. All I got to do is say, Melinda, can you still perceive Jesus? Yes. Focus on him. I mean, we're just going to follow Jesus. Once that piece is in place, all the facilitator needs to do is just coach the person to interact with Jesus as a therapist, interact with Jesus as a leader. The first thing you can do is say, okay, Jesus, so focus on Jesus. Ask him, what do you want to do today, Lord? And then describe what happens. From that point on, every point of the session, every issue that comes up, every question that comes up, even like what should we do today? Do you even want to work on trauma? We defer every one of those to Jesus. If we're working on traumatic memories, as soon as you get inside any traumatic memory, mostly, part of trauma is you can't perceive Jesus there. So usually when you go into a traumatic memory, you can't perceive Jesus there when you start. The first thing we do is, okay, let's help you connect with Jesus inside that traumatic memory. Once the person perceives Jesus inside the traumatic memory, again, okay, from here on out, he's now on site. Can you still perceive Jesus there in the traumatic memory? We focus on him, ask him for guidance and help. Every issue, every question, every problem, anything that comes up, he's the therapist in charge. I'm just the assistant. So one of the facilitator's jobs is to just monitor to make sure that you're still connected to Jesus. That's one of your most important jobs. So I'm facilitating. I'm just coaching you. Keep interacting with Jesus. And I'm watching for any clues that you've lost that connection. Mm-hmm. If at any point you lose that Jesus connection, my job is just, there's a set of tools. I call them Immanuel interventions. There's a whole section in the great big huge book about how can we get that connection back. So my job is to set it up in the beginning as a facilitator, then coach you to interact with Jesus as the person in charge. I'm monitoring to make sure you still have the connection. If it drops out, it's my job to help you get it back. And the last cool piece of the Immanuel approach, just as far as practical process goes, is what I call the safety nets. And this is a part of why it's so much easier and safer to transfer. A part of why lay people can do this. A part of why you can go to a village in a third world country, and in a weekend you can teach people to use the basic tools, is because if anywhere during the process you don't know what to do, you realize, okay, well, maybe Dr. Carl would know what to do here. I don't, because I'm 23 years old. I'm in Uganda. I have a third grade education. All you got to do is say, okay, I'm not sure what to do here. Let's go back to the original positive memory and connection with Jesus. I just coach the person, okay, we're stuck here. You just coach them to describe again that positive memory. And what do you know? That you can go back to that positive memory, focus on it, get back inside it, stir up gratitude again, reconnect with Jesus in that place. And even though we got stuck and we didn't get our healing taken care of, but you're back at a safe place, feeling grateful, connected to Jesus, and that's an okay outcome. Mm-hmm. Any point in the middle of the session where you don't know what to do, you go back to the positive place. If you have time, you can troubleshoot there. You can say, okay, well, now we're comfortably in a positive memory with Jesus. How come we were stuck? So it's a safety net troubleshooting tool. And at the end of your time, if you're running out of time, you're at the end of your designated time, and the person's still in a tough place, which is like one of the biggest challenges for professional therapists, is if your client is at a bad place at the end of your appointment time, how do you care for that? And that's a great, big, huge part of training, and it's stressful, and it gives therapists gray hairs. You can be a 23-year-old volunteer with a third-grade education in Uganda, and all you got to do is 10 minutes from the end, the person's still in a painful memory that we haven't resolved. Let's go back to the positive memory, stir up gratitude, get your relational circuits back on, reconnect with Jesus. We can work more next week, but for now, the plane is back on the ground, and you're okay. That just gives you a whole lot of options for having less experienced lay people, volunteers, beginners, to be able to use this or practice it or learn it safely, which is a crazy new, to me that was totally new with the Immanuel approach. And then the second safety net is that if I'm doing a group or if I'm training beginners, I say, okay, so initially, positive memory, gratitude, connection with Jesus. If the person does not get a connection with Jesus in their positive memory, they don't go work on painful memories. And we've discovered that most of the people who get into trouble and things turn out badly are the same as the ones who aren't able to get that original connection. So it's like if someone told you you're doing some kind of thing where you have people on a high wire or doing dangerous stunts, and if somebody said, oh, these 8 people are the ones who are going to get injured today, you'd say, oh, well, those 8 people are going to sit and watch. That'd be a no-brainer, right? So it's like that's sort of what the Lord has given us there, that the people, for whatever reason, and it may be that they got a connection yesterday and they'll get a connection tomorrow, but if right now, whatever the deal is, you can't get a connection with Jesus, you're one of the people who's going to get injured today. And as the director, I would just say, hey, let's just skip that part. Instead of having you do the stunt and get injured and go to the hospital, since God told us, we have some, prophetic, miraculous way of knowing that, I just say, why don't we just have you sit and watch, and we'll just skip the part of getting injured and going to the hospital. And to me, with the safety net of being able to go back to the safe, positive place, and the safety net of the people who can't do that, we don't send them into the dangerous place. Those two pieces hugely, dramatically protect this approach, even with lay people, volunteers, from bad outcomes. So that would be one way to summarize the Immanuel approach. There's the real short crash course, 5.5-minute summary.
Well, so this is off script, but you keep talking about connection with Jesus, and that's really a key word here, because our whole ministry is face to face, and our vision is connecting people to Jesus.
Yes, right.
And so I love that you kept saying the connection to Jesus, because that's what our whole vision and passion is. So connecting connecting people face to face, giving them tools to do this, and of course, Immanuel is something that we've been doing for years.
So why does that need to be off script?
What is it? What's that?
Why does that need to be off script?
No,
That's great.
It's not. So I guess there's 2 questions here. What does it mean to have a connection with Jesus? And 2, why is that important? Why is it important to have a connection with Jesus?
And so I'll even add, when I'm teaching a seminar, I'll say an interactive contingent connection with Jesus.
Okay.
Because there's subtle ways a person can just say, well, it feels true. I know God's with me. I sort of feel a vague sense of reassurance. Well, that's good. But like when you have a friendship, you can feel that a big part of having a meaningful friendship is you have to communicate back and forth. It's not just like, oh, I met this person and she walks along beside me. We never talk. I don't know anything about her. But she smiles, and it just somehow I don't feel as lonely. Mm-hmm. Well, that's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. But having an interactive connection where I say, well, hey, I'm scared right now. Mm-hmm. And you say, don't worry, I'll be with you. And I say, yeah, but I'm still... Having that interaction is obviously just like so obvious that it's almost like everybody's thinking, why are you even talking about it? But there's a whole lot of folks who they've never experienced a tangible sense of Jesus' presence that includes, it feels like we actually communicate back and forth. Mm-hmm. We have an interaction. I can actually communicate with Jesus. I feel like he hears me, and I feel like he responds. And that big word contingent is like his response is contingent on what I am. If I'm smiling, he's happy with me. If I'm sad, They're like, oh, he's actually crying with me. If I ask a question, I feel like I get a response that is a response to my question. So an interaction where his responses are actually directly responding to, contingent upon what's happening with me, that package right there, that's really at the center of any real relationship. And it's nice just to, in faith, know that God is with me.
Yeah.
But having a tangible, subjective experience of his friendship, living, interactive, back and forth, he's responding to what's happening in my heart. That, to me, is a huge, big, crazy thing that has happened. Everybody knows this if you look carefully at history. People in history, people in the Bible, people in the New Testament have that. But to have been learning more about how we can cooperate with brain science. The more we know about how God designed the brain, and the more we cooperate with it, the more consistently, instead of just occasionally it happens in a conference or something and we say, yay, we can actually deliberately set up the conditions so that most of the time the person can actually experience. I can perceive Jesus' presence, I kind of have a sense of his presence, I have sort of an image of his face with a smile, and it feels like he's hearing what I'm saying, we're interacting, we're communicating in real time about what's important to me right now. That package is just huge, amazing, fantastic, crazy, good news, center of the gospel.
And another question that's coming to my mind for those that may have never had a connection, they're like, well, I've never, just like what you're saying, I've never experienced God's presence. I think so many believers, it's a one way, and we've heard this, we talk about it, we get on the phone, Jesus, I need this is okay, bye. And with no opportunity for him to respond. And I think that's something that we forget, that this is a two-way relationship. But who can do this, Dr. Carl? Like, is it really hard, or does it take a really super spiritual person?
Just so I can touch several points there. So one piece is we just say, Jesus, I need help, please help me. We just send up the message and then go on and don't even listen, which is a lot of folks do that, which obviously gets in the way of actually hearing. But there's also a whole bunch of us, this was my story, where I would talk to Jesus and beg for a response and wait for a response and go to 100 conferences over 30 years of my life, where they all claimed to, we'll help you be able to hear God, and would never get anything. I would beg God to talk to me, but not be able to perceive much of a response. There's a whole chapter in here about my experience, little teeny, faint little whispers, but never a tangible perception of his personal living presence.
I think that there's sometimes a misperception that, and because I've talked to many people, only the pastor, someone really spiritual can hear God.
Yes. So let me touch this. Yes, good question. So part of the amazement has been in first world countries where we're more defended and all, it's not as high. It might be 70% or 50 or 80 or something. But a great big chunk of people, if they just try, they cooperate with the simple steps that I've described, and the way your brain's built, it mostly works. We just had a conference right here, and there's 140 people, and our beginners conference piece, we just tried these simple, basic tools, none of the intermediate advanced troubleshooting. And when I asked how many people were able to perceive some kind of tangible, interactive presence of Jesus, and my sense, maybe 80% of the hands went, maybe 110 people raised their hands. So that's like newcomers, beginners, basic conference, just the simple tools, no troubleshooting. We got 3/4. That's kind of crazy. You go to places where there's kind of less sophistication, less left hemisphere interference, less defended stuff in the way. Often, we just the super basic tools. Go to a village somewhere, children, total beginners, 25-year-olds with third-grade educations. We just do the simple tools, no fancy troubleshooting. 2/3, 3/4 of people say, oh, I sense Jesus' presence. I feel his presence. I kind of sense his thoughts coming to me. I see an image of his face. Some version of, I can perceive his tangible, personal presence, and I can feel that we're communicating back and forth, and it feels real, and it feels true. And if you do it, I coach them to do it, you can observe objective, observable, positive fruit that lasts, which is, to me, is a big clue. This is not just all in our imaginations. crazy 2/3 of the folks who, like, just all comers, it works right out of the box, which is hard to believe. I mean, that's hard to believe. So I'd be just like, okay, well, try it. And then there's a group of folks like me that there's blockages. There's whole chapters in the great big book about, the different kinds of things that can be in the way. And my utter conviction, observation, biblical foundation, clinical observations, Jesus is always with us. And I believe he always wants us to be able to perceive his presence and have a connection. And if that's not happening, there's something in the way. And when you find it and move it, the people are able to perceive his presence. And my experience is 99% of the folks that aren't able to have that interactive connection with the basic tools, you use the intermediate and advanced troubleshooting tools, and 99% of those folks are then able, whether it's an hour of troubleshooting or 5 sessions or months, or sometimes on big complicated cases, you might work for a couple of years using other tools. But almost, close to 100% of the folks over the last 15 years, as I deliberately troubleshoot, eventually they're like, oh my goodness. So there's another little touch on that. It's sort of surprising, it's fun, how many people say, well, yes, I believe that what you just said, Dr. Carl, that's all good and encouraging. And yes, the people who go to the charismatic folks, the other people, the women, the emotional people. But I'm an engineer, I'm a white male engineer in America. This kind of thing never works for me. It's like, well, just try it. If it doesn't work, that'll be disappointing, and I would encourage you to do troubleshooting, but why don't we just try it? And it's surprising, striking, fun. How many of those guys, they'll do it and they'll be like, oh my gosh. Gee. I've lost count of how many emails, how many times I've seen it, how many testimonies I've got from people who nothing else like this has ever worked. They've gone to conferences, they've tried devotional things, they've done guided imagery, they've done all kinds of other stuff, and they say, nothing has ever worked for me, I don't think this is going to work. And I say, well, just try it. And a surprising number of those folks, somehow these pieces, and some of them are fairly new, and the putting them together in this way, as far as I know, is new. It's applying brain science to facilitate spiritual connection in a way. Lots of people who say nothing else has ever worked, they're like, oh my goodness, this is the first thing that's ever worked. So that's the long answer to your question of who does it work for.
So what you're saying, I just want to reiterate, Dr. Carl, because this is I think it's so key and important to being a Christian. The life of a believer is about connection with Jesus. You're saying that anybody from any denomination, anywhere in the world, can have an ongoing, interactive connection with Jesus where they know him, they know he's there.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
And it's
not just theory. I'm a board-certified psychiatrist, MD, specialist, hardworking student, scored at the top of every exam, testing any objective ability of my training and memory and medical expertise, whatever. So it's like I think I have some credibility. I've been a psychiatrist, MD, since clinical work in hospital since 86, licensed just in 88. 30 plus years. I don't know, something like 40 or 50,000 hours of clinical experience. So that's valid. But also, it's not even just theory. We've done the experiment. So we've been doing this, using these tools from the first early iterations to the more fully developed pieces for 10 to 15 years all over the world. And we've tried it with children, with men, with women, with children, teenagers, young adults, middle-aged, 80 years old. We've tried it in the United States and Scotland and Ireland and England and New Zealand and Australia and Canada and Mexico and Guatemala and El Salvador and Georgia, the country, and Azerbaijan and Iran and Saudi Arabia and, Rwanda. Just villages, educated, non-educated. In fact, the more educated, the more you can live with the illusion that you're in control, and that tends to get in the way. But educated, non-educated, Chinese, Indonesian, Malaysian, African, North American. We've tried quite a few things, and most of those folks, it works. And like I said, there's, whether it's a 10% or a quarter or 30%, depending on where you are, that have to do more troubleshooting. But everywhere we went, age groups, racial groups, socioeconomic groups, most of the people with a fairly small amount of basic tools and troubleshooting, it works. I mean, that's crazy. That's amazing. That's fantastic good news. And I kind of also did the experiment. I did 40 years of Christian life, just basically written word, faith, left hemisphere, no tangible experience of Jesus' personal friendship presence. And that was, I mean, it was better than nothing, but it was dry and it was hard and it was, I mean, now that I've also done Christian faith in life with the living word as the foundation in the center, with the center of my personal Christian faith experience now is a regular, daily, subjective, tangible experience of Jesus' personal friendship, interactive presence. That is I mean, the other one was better than nothing, but it's hard to get words for this. This is just a whole different way to do it. Oh my gosh. This is so much better news. Oh wow. Yeah, so that's my personal experience, which is part of why I have so much passion about it. I've done the experiment on myself, and this way to do it is, I mean, a 25-year-old VW Bug, with firing on half its cylinders will get you to the grocery store. But a brand new BMW is really, I mean, if you had the choice, it wouldn't be a big struggle.
Yeah.
And that's about what it feels like for me.
So you use the Immanuel approach, or just connecting with Immanuel, you do that on a daily basis?
Yes,
ma'am.
Can you
just give an example of what that looks like?
So for me, this is like, I tend to be hardcore. I don't take no prisoners. If I figure something out, I do it all the way. So for me, that means regularly I meet with a prayer partner. My wife, Charlotte, and I do this regularly with each other, and we both have prayer partners that if she's triggering me and it's hard to let her facilitate, I have multiple options. And regularly I have a facilitator who's able to do this with me, which is when it works the best. God has created our brains to work best in community. So there's powerful neurological stuff about it will work better and be more powerful consistently always if you do it with another human being, with a face and a relationship. And God built your brain to do it that way. And I make it happen that I do that on a regular basis. And after you learn to do it, and you practice it with another person, and the more experience and the more skill you get, the more easily you can do it on your own. Whether it's just I'm on my exercise walk, I say, okay, Jesus, I'm just going to think about specific things I'm grateful for. I'm going to think about memories where I perceive your presence. I'm going to stir up gratitude. And it's distracting. You got to dodge cars. I live in Chicago. You try not to die. I mean, don't get run over. I mean, there's all stuff you have to navigate. But even in all that, hey, thank you, grateful. I welcome your presence. And I'll usually kind of have a sort of a subtle image of Jesus' face. It feels true. It's like a 1 or 2 intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. But it feels true. It feels real. I sense Jesus' presence. I kind of sense a subtle back and forth sort of thoughts, or just sort of, hey, he's smiling, he's enjoying being with me. That kind of thing I do every day. In the middle of the night, if I wake up at 3 in the morning and I'm worried and I can't sleep, I'll just get enough of it, just sort of do enough to get a connection with Jesus. I'll sense his presence. I kind of have a vague image of his face. And it's subtle, not dramatic, but it feels true. I know it's true that he's here with me. I sense his presence. And I'll just talk directly to him. Like, this is what I'm worried about, Lord. This is the thing I'm struggling with. And it feels true that he hears me, that he understands what I'm struggling with. I can see responses on his face. That I can tell he's actually tracking with me. Just that right there is helpful. There's a neat journaling thing. The Life Model people have this wonderful little Joyful Journey book. Some of the same brain science, some of the same neurology that makes it most powerful when you do it with a person. About half of that same brain stuff works. Journaling helps get the language. There's a little journaling thing that helps doing it on your own, effective. Then there's lifestyle pieces. I got a whole chapter in the book about, well, actually it's on the website, a supplementary chapter. There's a DVD set, whatever, about Immanuel lifestyle. There's habits you can learn that you incorporate into your day of being able to notice when your relational circuits go off and then take responsibility for getting them back on. Now what that means is more and more of the time, your normal state will be your brain will be in a position where it's easier to connect with the Lord and hear his voice and perceive his presence. So that's not a piece like of what I do all day. All those things, you put them together, and it will be easier for you to perceive God's presence, establish that connection with Jesus, have the interaction, sense his guidance or his responses to you. You put all those things together, it's easier, it'll happen more often, when it does, it'll be clearer and stronger, it'll last longer. Every aspect of your actual living connection with Jesus' abiding presence will get better if you implement this stuff as a part of your everyday life.
I love the Immanuel approach so much.
It's so gentle.
Oh man, it is so it is very gentle, and I've heard people call it a joy sandwich. This is all about getting to a positive connection, a place of appreciation, a positive memory, and inviting Jesus into that, and choosing to be interactive and allow him to speak rather than all those quick hurried prayers, oh God, help, this, and then not even being quiet to hear him respond. So what a beautiful approach this is.
And it is a reflection of the ongoing connection he wants to have with us on a daily basis, and also how he created us to be in relationship with each other, not just with him, but with one another. And we can practice it together also.
So the book that he kept referring to, he kept saying, well, there's a chapter in the book about this, and there's a chapter in the book about this, or 3 chapters about this. We wanted to let you know how to get a hold of that resource. It's actually called the Immanuel Approach for Emotional Healing and for Life. It's a pretty substantial book.
It's about, it's over 700 pages. I have it. And no, I have not read the whole thing, but you can read it in bits and spurts, and it's so helpful.
Well, it's loaded with testimonies as well, with the benefits of the Immanuel approach. He does have a website, immanuelapproach.com, and there's a lot more information there that you can look at, and you can find the resource tab will lead you to where you can get the Immanuel approach for emotional healing and for life. It's only about $30. We did look on Amazon to see if it was there, and some people are reselling it for 3 times that much. So we would not recommend you go to Amazon for it, but you can get a hold of it at immanuelapproach.com on the resource tab. And we would love for you guys to have access to that as well. There's a lot more of this interview. And, we did go longer with this interview. I usually try to keep them shorter just so that the episodes are not too long. But these 2 pieces that we did today, those were really significant. They needed to be one big chunk. And what we're noticing is part 1 tends to get more focused than part 2 or 3 or 4. And we don't want people to miss this. And so that's why this episode is a bit longer. And we're not going to take up a whole lot of time talking about it because Dr. Carl really did a beautiful job explaining it. And we have so much more from that interview, at least 2, possibly 3 more episodes with Dr. Carl Lehman. And I'll tell you, he shares some stories later on in the interview that are so powerful, just how being connected with Jesus can really transform. And that's what our tag is. True connection changes everything.
Well, thank you for listening. And we hope that you tune into the next podcast. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us through our website at face2faceministries.org, all one word. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram at face2facemin, and sign up for our monthly newsletter. And do us a favor also, if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe and give us a 5-star rating and write a review on whichever platform you listen to the podcast on, and share.
Yeah, share it with your friends. And, I'm finding out that some people don't really know how to rate and review. And so many podcast apps are available out there. I know you can do it in iTunes pretty easily. But if you need help learning how to do that, just Google it. Like, how do I leave a review on such and such? And that will help you because, like we said in the last episode, it really does help us to get more noticed and to be more visible for people as a resource. And we really do want this to be a resource to the church. We want it to be educational, informative, helpful. And hopefully it'll be part of your journey closer to Jesus, because that's the whole point, is face-to-face connection with him. So there you go. There you go. Part 1 of the Immanuel approach.
All right. Awesome. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you soon.